We're fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to connect.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Tuesday morning edition, Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. We have ourselves just a loaded Tuesday show. I was thinking about this morning. I don't know how we got through all those July and August episodes, but we got a jam-packed show, a lot to talk about. Here is what is on the agenda for today. We're going to open, I'll say this, is that the Arkansas job opened right after we got off air the other day. We did a live reaction to it after the fact. But today we're 48 hours removed, and I think there are some big new twists in that search, including I think there may be a guy that's angling for the job. From there, we will continue the conversation. Kentucky football, man, oh, man, oh, man. It's bad. I think it's maybe the most under-discussed story on the national scale, just how bad it's gotten. We'll discuss that. And a shocking stat that I think will blow you away, not just how bad things are, but why there's really no reason for hope going forward. Finally, Tyran Stokes, 5-star recruit. New twist in that one, to say the least, so we'll get to that to wrap the show. As always, chat is live. Questions are welcome. Super chats are welcome. By the way, we did a live on Saturday. Somebody dropped a super chat. I apologize. I did not see it until after, so we appreciate the support. Obviously, we'll prioritize super chats. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. One, make sure you're subscribed to Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. On YouTube, we are at 61,000 subscribers. We're actually halfway to 62,000. I think we could get there before the end of the week, but we cannot do it without your support. Make sure you're subscribed as we head into September or October. I'll say this. October was one of the most incredible months we've had. So October is going to be big. September was unbelievable. I think I said October was one of our amazing months. September was unbelievable. Thank you for your support, but we're just getting started, as guess what? We're going to have basketball by the end of the month as well. So make sure you're subscribed there, and then, of course, Apple, Spotify as well. Finally, before we get started, you know what I got to do? I got to thank our friends. I got to thank the official ticketing partner of the Aaron Torres Pod. I got to thank SeatGeek. Okay, so here's the deal. Maybe you're an Arkansas fan. Maybe you were ready to boycott the team, and then all of a sudden, you have new hope because you have a new head coach running your program. Maybe you want to go support Bobby Petrino in Knoxville in a few weeks. Maybe you want to support him when the Hogs come home to face Mississippi State, Auburn, whoever they're going to end up playing. I think Auburn's actually on the road. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make, if you're an Arkansas fan, if you're whatever fan, if you need tickets to watch your favorite college football team, or as we get closer to college basketball, you need some tickets as well. That's what you need to do. You need to go to SeatGeek.com. And use promo code Torres. Okay, so first of all, SeatGeek is America's #1 ticketing app. We love working with them. They rate every ticket 1 through 10. They let you know what tickets are good, which tickets aren't. Green dot means go ahead and purchase. Red dot means you probably want to stay away from that. But as importantly, as you can see on the screen there, they take care of listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod. So how about this? First-time users of SeatGeek, if you use promo code Torres, you get $20 off your first purchase. Sorry, we got so many great promos, I can't keep up. $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek.com, use promo code Torres. SeatGeek app, use promo code Torres. That applies to not only college football games, basketball, Major League Baseball. I had one listener reach out, say, I'm going to one of the baseball playoff games. I'm going to use your promo code, so that's awesome. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. SeatGeek.com. Promo code Torres gets you $20 off your first purchase. That said, busy Tuesday in the world of sports, to say the least. There is no more time to waste. So let's get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day. Ooh, buddy. It is a busy couple days in Fayetteville. Not just because John Calipari has another Final Four potential national championship contender. Arkansas football, it is, it's the biggest story in college football right now, right? So if you listen to Sunday's show, we went live at 11 a.m. Eastern time And I said from the beginning, I said, we're on Sam Pittman watch. We don't know what's going to happen. We will keep you updated. If something happens during the show, we'll react to it. And then, of course, if something doesn't happen, we'll come back later. Well, naturally, Hunter Yurachek was watching the show. He clearly did not want the smoke that Torres was going to deliver. Yes, I'm being sarcastic. But minutes after we got off air, Arkansas did fire Sam Pittman. On that day, we did some reaction. We talked about Sam Pittman. We don't have to revisit all of that here. But listen, I hope Sam Pittman, if he does decide to retire, enjoys it. I thought it was actually pretty noble of him. I know he didn't give up a ton of money, but did take a little bit less than he could have in that buyout. I think he really does want what's best for Arkansas. And whatever his next chapter is, I wish him well. And I think we need to give him credit for re-elevating the program after what was a disastrous era before him. With that said, it is time to look ahead. And just in the less than 48 hours since Sam Pittman was fired, a lot has gone on at Arkansas. By the way, make sure you're following our Torres on the Hogs Twitter page, Torres on the Hogs, for all your late-breaking Arkansas news. Charlie is one of our interns who does a great job helping me with that. Torres on the Hogs. So with that said, question becomes, okay, Torres, I know Sam Pittman was fired, but what happened? Well, I think there's been a few things that have happened, some very public, some kind of happening behind the scenes, and I believe there is very much a lead candidate emerging. I want to go ahead and discuss it because it's got some interesting new twists. Leader is emerging, and I think there's some stuff happening. First of all, in terms of what's new, a couple things. One, Monday, this is already a little bit of old news at this point. So Bobby Petrino, we knew was going to be the interim head coach. And Bobby Petrino, I'll tell you this man knows I got one shot left in my life to become a full-time permanent SEC head coach, and I ain't letting anybody screw it up, okay? So he does a press conference on Monday, whatever, and then goes into the coaching office, and basically was just like, he pulled the old that clip from the movie. I forget what movie it was even called, but Dave Chappelle. He's like, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, you're cool, you're fired, you're fired. And I know we shouldn't be making light of the fact that people did lose their jobs, families' lives were uprooted, but this is also a results-based business. You have assistant coaches making hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they simply weren't doing the job on the defensive end of the defensive side of the football. And Bobby Petrino has no loyalty to those guys. And so I'll be honest, I did think changes were going to come. I didn't know they were going to come quite in the manner they did, as he basically wiped out the entire defensive coaching room on Monday morning. But again, I don't mean to make light of people losing their jobs, but the counter to that is the defense was not living up to its end of the bargain. I go back to the Notre Dame game a couple days ago, and I say, like, I expected the defense to maybe have its best effort of the season against Notre Dame coming off Memphis. Instead, they had their worst. It's clear they either weren't being coached well, they weren't being prepared well, or they weren't responding to it. And so it was time for everybody to move on. So with that said, that happens. I think there was one other interesting note, and then I want to get to some updates on candidates, okay? The interesting note to me is, again, there was a press conference. Bobby Petrino spoke. I do think it's worth noting that Hunter Yurachek, the AD, was asked about, his role in the next head coaching search. And I think this is important. I know if you're not an Arkansas fan, it's a little bit of minutia and in the weeds, but I'll tell you this, I live in LA. UCLA is looking for a new head football coach. And I can tell you behind the scenes, they haven't officially fired the AD yet, but they've put together this search committee, and I've been told that essentially the UCLA AD has no power over who the next football coach will be. And so I bring it up because that's been the question in Arkansas. Is the AD that brought in Sam Pittman, the AD who, oh, by the way, just a week or two ago said, yeah, we're not really built to compete at the top of college football right now, is Arkansas really going to let him make this next head coaching hire? And I think it's especially important because if the AD says we're not built to win in the SEC, one, certainly not a great message to send to candidates. I think that goes without saying. But then two, why are you led to believe that this guy is going to make a good hire or the right hire or is even in position to make hire? Because, oh, by the way, if the football position isn't built to succeed at the top of the sport, that falls on you. Whose job is it? I mean, it's Sam Pittman's job to coach, but to put resources together, to put whatever together to compete at the highest level, that is on the AD. And so it'll be interesting. But Hunter Yurachek, the AD, did say that as far as he knows, I believe that was the quote almost verbatim, as far as he knows, he will be the one making the head coaching selection. I don't know that I fully believe that. I don't even know if that's fully been decided yet, but we will see what his future looks like in the coming days. With that said, I did promise some big new twists, and I will say this. We talked about candidates on Sunday, but it does feel to me like there is a big name emerging as the, I would say, favorite for the job. Now, I wouldn't say he's the favorite. There's not 100% approval rating. This isn't Jim Harbaugh at Michigan or something like that, but there is a name that is emerging. And I think there's also a couple names that maybe I didn't give enough credence to on Sunday when I did the candidates piece that I think are starting to come out of the woodwork. And so I want to go ahead and jump in. I want to go ahead and discuss them. And I want to go ahead and start with a report from Bruce Feldman. Okay, so Bruce Feldman, college football insider forever, Fox Sports and The Athletic, he put out a piece on Sunday. You know, what firing happens, every website in America has their coaching candidates list ready to go. And so I just bring it up because Bruce Feldman did put out a list of coaching candidates, and he teased it. It was at The Athletic. It was behind a paywall. But he put up a tweet that said this as follows. He said, quote, Sam Pittman is out. Industry sources told The Athletic some key Razorback money folks want to bring SMU's Rhett Lashley back to Arkansas. More on that and who else may be in the mix. All right, so Bruce Feldman, who is plugged in, especially in the agent world, says that he believes Rhett Lashley is the favorite, and there are key money people behind Rhett Lashley. Now, I'll say this. We don't generally share stuff behind a paywall, but a basic Google search, you go to any of your websites, any of your favorite college football websites will basically tell you what the article said. So let's go ahead and get to Saturday Down South, talking about Bruce Feldman's article with a little bit of insight on who may be pushing for Rhett Lashley. This is from Saturday Down South. I believe it was Monday morning. Said, quote, the Arkansas job will certainly garner interest from certain head coaches and top assistants from around the country. One leading candidate, according to The Athletic's Bruce Feldman, is SMU coach Rhett Lashley. Okay, so we know that part. Question is, where's the money coming from? Per Feldman's report, this is on Saturday Down South, Lashley has the, quote, support of Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones, who is a former Razorback himself and an Arkansas booster. The report goes so far as to say Jones is squarely behind the effort to get Lashley in charge of Arkansas football. So one, that's certainly interesting. The timing is certainly interesting because Jerry Jones was certainly in the news on Sunday, and not for anything Arkansas related, as Micah Parsons returned to Dallas as a member of the Green Bay Packers. But I just bring it up because it certainly makes things interesting. It's certainly unique. And listen, Jerry Jones has, my understanding, been kind of hands-off with, I don't want to say he's been hands-off, but hasn't been as hands-on with Arkansas athletics. Now, remember when John Calipari got the basketball job, there was a report, I think, he donated X amount of money to NIL, X amount of money to this, X amount of money to that. But I think that's certainly interesting. And what I will say is this. Rhett Lashley is certainly a candidate. By the way, for anyone that's not an Arkansas fan that's coming in that's saying, why would Rhett Lashley leave SMU? Well, we'll get into that in a minute. But what I think is important to note, from the state of Arkansas, played for Gus Malzahn in high school, coached at Arkansas as a young assistant coach. And so it's a homecoming opportunity. Now, the big question with Rhett Lashley, and we did talk about this on Sunday's, reaction to the firing, but also it's going to be a conversation between now and whenever Arkansas names its head coach is, would Rhett Lashley actually leave the SMU job for Arkansas, right? And I've already seen a lot of different things about Rhett Lashley and about would he leave. Listen, what I would say is this. I think there's only one person in the world that knows if Rhett Lashley would actually leave the job. That is Rhett Lashley. And certainly, his inner circle. But what I do think is we have to be fair, because I've seen a lot of this in the NIL era. SMU is the better job than Arkansas. Well, first of all, both have a ton of money. And I think what's notable about Arkansas and important is pretty straightforward. The money is there at Arkansas. You have to get the right person in place that is going to motivate the boosters and give them a reason to support the program. Give you a random side story. But I remember during basketball hiring this past spring, NC State fired its coach, and it was like, well, how much NIL do they actually have? Then they hired Will Wade. Everybody was super excited, and Will Wade got a crap ton of money to go to war in the portal in NIL. I know it's a little bit different because that was pre-rev share. We now have rev share, but it doesn't change the fact that you are going to need support from outside boosters, outside corporations, outside NIL. And so it's just going to take the right person. So don't tell me about all of SMU's money. I know SMU has a ton of money. Guess what? Arkansas has a ton of money as well. Beyond that, and I think this is the important part, ACC versus SEC. You could argue that in the hierarchy of the ACC, SMU is closer to the best job in the ACC than Arkansas is to the best job in the SEC. You can argue it, whatever, debate, discuss amongst yourselves at the water cooler, okay? What I will say, because I think this part is important, is that I think you can also argue that any job in the Big Ten or the SEC is essentially better than any job in the ACC. Now, maybe you could argue Florida State or Clemson or whatever, but the truth of the matter is we have to use that as context. The ACC, it's holding on by a thread right now, okay? It is not, listen, what I'll say with this is the ACC. Everyone's saying the right things right now, but as we discussed over the summer, 2030, it sounds like it's, at some point in the future when there's going to be flying cars and, whatever. 2030 isn't that long away. And that's when those buyouts drop in the ACC TV contract. And if you don't think that North Carolina and Clemson and Florida State and these schools that are positioning, that have the potential to leave and potential to have a good landing spot are positioning themselves right now, you're out of your mind. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but I wouldn't put it at 0% either. And so SMU sounds great right now, but what's the future of the ACC? And if the ACC breaks up, and if, let's just say, Clemson and Florida State leave, where does that leave everybody else? And what are we talking about them as a conference? And so these are all things that coaches have to weigh. Conference affiliation, where we are now, where we are going to be 5 years from now. What about NIL, this and that? So these are all things that need to be figured out. And I think they need to be figured out only by Rhett Lashlee. And what I would say about it is, again, these are questions that if Hunter Yurachek is doing the hiring, darn it, he better have an answer for. He better be able to explain why he said that Sam Pittman was not given the resources needed to succeed and why he can change that for the next guy, or he's not going to get anybody. Now, with that said, we've talked a lot already about the Arkansas job. We've talked a little bit about Rhett Lashlee. I did see a second tweet, though, because, again, the conversation about Rhett Lashlee, is he a legitimate candidate? Is he not a candidate? Would he leave a very good ACC job for a questionable SEC job? I saw something interesting that I think is at least worth discussing, okay? So I think if you're a college sports fan, you're at least tangentially familiar with the name Tom Mars, okay? So Tom Mars is a very prominent lawyer who basically, he has the NCAA over the curb, over a barrel, and he's just spanking them with a paddle over and over and over again. He's the guy, listen, I hate to do it, but, when Ole Miss fired Houston Nutt, Tom Mars was kind of consulting or something. He was the one that discovered Hugh Freeze, who I do like, but Hugh Freeze was maybe making some phone calls on his personal or his work cell phone that he should. That was Tom Mars who discovered that. That was his law firm who discovered it, led to Hugh Freeze's firing, but also a lot of other stuff since then. Shea Patterson, remember, he was at Ole Miss. He wants to transfer. The NCAA says you got to sit out. He hires Tom Mars. He's playing the next year at Michigan. And basically, I think you can argue that a lot of where we are in college sports today is because of Tom Mars. Why do I bring it up? Well, he's an Arkansas native, or I don't know if he's an Arkansas native, but he lives in Arkansas right now. He practices in Arkansas right now. And he did put out an interesting tweet that I absolutely think is relevant in the conversation of would Rhett Lashlee take the job? Is he interested? Producer Matt, you could put up Tom Mars' tweet. So remember, this is a prominent lawyer. This guy is not hanging out on Twitter like he's 17 years old. Whatever. Tom Mars tweeted out on Sunday night, prominent lawyer, as best I can tell, he runs his own Twitter account. He said, I've known Rhett Lashlee and his family, and this was in reference to the Arkansas job opening up. Tom Mars says, I've known Rhett Lashlee and his family since Rhett was a kid. If Arkansas wants to hire one of its own, and integrity is important to the Board of Trustees, they would never find anyone with the higher standards of integrity and better leadership skills than Rhett Lashlee. But we'll see. So maybe to most of you that means nothing. To me, I don't know that it means nothing, and let me explain why. The reason I don't believe it means nothing is pretty straightforward. It's because of the fact that Tom Mars, listen, smart guy, obviously, lives in the state of Arkansas, or at least practices law in the state of Arkansas. And I think as importantly, and this is important, has a personal relationship with Rhett Lashlee. And so let me ask you this. If you have friends, if you have family, if you have people in your life that you want to help, you do what you do. You make a phone call on their behalf. You write a letter of recommendation on their behalf. Maybe you tweet on their behalf. I don't know. What I also know is this. If your friend or somebody that you care about or know or have a personal relationship is not interested in something, the one thing you do not do is publicly put your support behind them, because what ends up happening? You just put that person in a bad situation, and then you usually get a phone call like, dude, why'd you tweet that? Now I got to answer to this. I got to answer that. And so to me, Tom Mars, I don't think it's hyperbolic to say, is one of the most important people in the state of Arkansas. I don't think that's hyperbolic. Big name in college sports, and he's known Rhett Lashlee since he was a kid. And so to me, if Rhett Lashlee does not want that job, if he has zero interest, he just wants to coach SMU, never wants to leave, I don't think he has a personal friend of his. I don't think a personal friend of his puts that out. And so the fact that it was put out, I'm just saying, I'm starting to think that maybe it either came from Rhett Lashlee, or Rhett Lashlee doesn't hate that he is getting support from somebody. And here's the other thing. Tom Mars, again, lives in the state of Arkansas. This isn't one of those, put this out so I can get a raise at the place that I'm happy at. And so, because again, it just puts Tom Mars in a bad. If Tom Mars is not putting out that tweet, if he knows Rhett Lashlee is just using it as leverage to get a new contract at his current job. So I think there's interest in Rhett Lashlee. I will say I tried to find this morning that audio. Remember Paul Feinbaum, Senator Paul Feinbaum, maybe even? Remember that Paul Feinbaum clip? Producer Matt, who does not live in Alabama anymore, but is from Alabama, did not like that little jab there. But Senator Paul Feinbaum, over the course of the summer, was hosting Sports Talk Radio and did reference like, Rhett Lashlee is working behind the scenes to get that job. And so I just bring it up because to me, it just doesn't feel like someone of Tom Mars's stature, who, again, doesn't tweet a lot. He's not active online 24 hours a day. I don't think he puts that out if Rhett Lashlee does not at least have some interest in the job. So we'll see what happens. A couple more thoughts. By the way, Producer Matt, if we have any good questions or comments about this coaching search, feel free to pop them up when I call for them. But a couple other things that I have heard over the last couple of days. One, I did see Brett Favre. We did not pull this tweet, by the way, but Brett Favre is on Team Torres. Brett Favre publicly advocated for John Gruden. Now, again, I don't really see, it doesn't feel like Gruden is getting as much traction as, frankly, I thought that he would. It doesn't mean that he shouldn't. It just means that he doesn't appear to be. That's who I've said it before. John Gruden said, I would, quote, die to coach in the SEC. Sorry, that's the dude that I want to go to war with. And I think he creates so much interest and excitement. But again, it feels like maybe there's not as much momentum as I thought. But I do think it is interesting that Brett Favre, of all people, remember Brett Favre was, I believe Gruden was his quarterbacks coach maybe for the Packers a million years ago. But Gruden, again, I don't think if Gruden had zero interest in the job, Brett Favre is tweeting that, but we'll see. A couple other names, by the way, that maybe I didn't give enough credence to over the course of the episode on Sunday. I didn't talk at all about Dan Mullen. I have been told, I think Dan Mullen's working hard behind the scenes to put himself in the conversation, or his representation is. I think there's pluses and minuses to that, like everybody else. I think Dan Mullen's pitch is, hey, couple things. One, I took, what would be considered an off-the-beaten path program in the SEC and led them to success. That was obviously Mississippi State. Remember, they got them to number one in the country. They almost made a 4-team playoff. So if there had been a 12-team playoff that year, they would have been in the playoff. And I think his pitch is, I'm 4-0 at UNLV right now. I'm having success. I did it at Mississippi State. I think the other part of his pitch is like, have you seen Florida since I left? You think I was the problem at Florida? You think I was the problem? I was the solution? I think there's pluses and minuses. I do think that towards the end, Dan Mullen was struggling, wasn't recruiting at the level needed to succeed. So there's a lot of fair conversations about Dan Mullen on both sides. but I've been told behind the scenes he has been working his butt off to get this job. I think John Summerall maybe is a little bit higher than I perceived. Now, I will mention, and I did mention this on Sunday, John Summerall is going to be a priority candidate at any SEC job that opens. The Tulane head coach, remember all of his ties. So he's from the state of Alabama. So if it goes sideways at Auburn, he's probably going to be Auburn's number one candidate. He played at Kentucky, was a longtime assistant coach at Kentucky. He is certainly going to be the number one candidate at Kentucky, which we're going to talk about here in just a minute. And I'll say this too. He was also an assistant at Ole Miss, and we don't expect Ole Miss to open. But if Lane Kiffin somehow gets that Florida job, then Ole Miss could open, and he would be the number one candidate there as well. So John Summerall, I think, is going to be, Lane Kiffin said it last week. John Summerall is going to be coaching in the SEC. I guess it was 2 weeks ago now. But I think the ties make more sense to other places, more so than Arkansas. But the counter to that is, what if Arkansas is the only SEC job that opens? What if Mark Stoops refuses to negotiate that buyout? What if Hugh Freeze goes on a winning streak here, which I don't think any Auburn fan, including the one producing this show, expects to happen? Anyway, the only point I'm trying to make, Summerall's maybe a little bit more of a priority than I thought he would be. But again, his ties are, negligible at best at Arkansas. Last thing I will say, we'll see who ends up making the hire. I have been told, though, by multiple people, I think, we're not trying to make this a basketball segment, but I do think the pizzazz and the excitement that John Calipari has brought to the basketball program, I think that's weighing in this search is John Calipari, with the help of Eric Musselman. I don't want to undersell what Eric Musselman did 3 straight second weekends, but Arkansas is now a national brand because of its basketball program, and they've gone to another level under John Calipari. They're playing in these huge games. They'll play against Duke on Thanksgiving, Houston right before Christmas, and it's just a national talking point. And so I think the people who are ultimately going to make this decision, and this is kind of why I don't know if Hunter Yurachek, is really going to be involved. I think they're sitting there saying, is there a football equivalent of John Calipari that can create excitement, that can make us a national story? Again, that's part of the reason why I personally like Gruden, but I just bring it up because that is certainly a conversation to have. Tell you what, before we get to break, I do want to mention just again, as always, we're going to be pumping out a crap ton of content over the course of the next few weeks. Do me, you don't have to do me a favor, but I just want you to think about, we do have the membership option for the Torres pod, the membership option. All you got to do is click join on the homepage. I think maybe this week we'll do our first members only, either live chat or short stream, talk a little bit about everything that's going on. And I should mention this as well. Some of you have signed up for membership. By the way, it's $4.99 a month. We'll start creating a little bit more content around that. I want to keep most of the show free, but if you just want to support the show, we would appreciate your support there. And what I will also say is this. I think what we're going to start doing is we're going to have a member of the month. Today's member of the month is Jesse White, who I actually believe is an Arkansas fan. Jesse, if you're watching, Jesse, if you're listening, that's what I need you to do. Email me, Aaron Torres, podcastquestions@gmail.com. Aaron Torres, podcastquestions@gmail.com. We have a special offer for you. But again, you want to help support the show. It really does go a long way. It's $4.99 a month. That's the cost of, it's less than a beer that you get at happy hour on Friday. So just click that join button at the top of the screen. And I think we're going to do our first members only stuff this week. By the way, one more thing on Arkansas. Wes Moore, who broke the John Calipari to Arkansas story, I believe will be joining me later in the week as well. All right, that's what we're going to do. I'm going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll get to some of your Arkansas questions. Matt, find me a few good ones if such a thing exists. And also, what was I going to say? Oh, we'll go from one school that definitely needs a coach to one school that probably should be starting to look. That's Kentucky. I saw a stat. It's going to blow you away how far things have fallen. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, I have so many people that reach out and say, Torres, you give me hours and hours and hours of free content every day, every month, every year. What can I do to help support the show? Well, you want to support the show and look good in the process. Make sure to check out and support the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Some of you wondering, what can I get in that merch store, Torres? Well, Kentucky fans, we got our Mark Pope Hope and Pope t-shirts. That is right. Mark Pope, monster first year. Year 2 is going to be even better. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirt at AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is coming. It is here. John Calipari has things rocking. Get your Big Pig Invasion tees. Again, AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. St. John's fans, we have our Big Rick Energy t-shirts. And if you're just a college basketball fan in general, guess what? Your March is for Day Drinking shirt. That is the shirt that you need year-round, but especially for the next NCAA tournament. You can order yours now. By the way, football fans, we got you covered too. Auburn fans, we already know the freeze warning has hit the plains. Make sure to get your freeze warning t-shirts. Also, Nebraska fans, new era, new rules, the t-shirt that you need before the start of this coming season. And oh, by the way, if you're a Colorado fan, if you're just a Coach Prime fan, we have our Dion shirts and hats, more of them than we know what to do with. So to check out the full line of Aaron Torres Media merch and also support the show, good news is we're going to have even more for the fall. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. And for more information, you can always reach out at Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All right, everybody. I'm back. Gonna be back. So tell you what, we're gonna get to some interesting news out of Kentucky. You know, Arkansas needs a head coach. Kentucky may soon. Before we do, though, we just for people just joining us, we did a huge deep dive into the latest with the Arkansas coaching search, and we certainly have quite a bit of conversation in the chat. So, producer Matt, you can pop up anything interesting or relevant. Luke, this is great. Okay, so obviously, this was something that I did not discuss during just the updates. Petrino. So we talked about this on Sunday's reaction. What is Bobby Petrino? Because I thought, you know, the most interesting thing about that Hunter Yurachek press release was that, and his statement was that, you know, he said it's going to be a national search that absolutely includes Bobby Petrino. There is no doubt that Bobby Petrino has publicly said now that he wants the job. And so the conversation became, what does Bobby Petrino have to do to get the job? I think Luke sets the bar. Right now, Arkansas through 5 games is currently 2-3. I'm not great at math, but 4-3, Luke says, if Petrino's job is to go 4-3, he'd have to have 2 wins over currently ranked teams, Texas A&M, Tennessee, LSU, Texas, and Missouri. All right, so we did not talk about the Bobby Petrino aspect of it, but I think, and I did say this, I think you get to 4-3, I think it's hard to argue that he shouldn't be the head coach because it's exactly what Luke said. Here is the rest of the schedule. So Arkansas is on a bye this week. They play at Tennessee out of the bye, then Texas A&M at home, as Luke says, currently a top 10 team, Auburn at home, Mississippi State at home. So 3 of the first 4 are at home. Texas A&M is no longer, by the way, in Dallas. It is now a true home and home. Final 3, at LSU, at Texas, Missouri at home. And so Luke's point is 1,000% accurate, is that I do think probably 4-4, listen, would, 4-3, with 3-4, I don't know, because then you're still not bowl eligible. And so I don't know. But I think 4-3 bowl eligible gets the job, because as Luke says, if you go 4-3, that means you have some wins over really good teams. And what I will say is this, is if you've watched Arkansas, listen, the Notre Dame game was a debacle. And I don't want to absolve Bobby Petrino from any blame, because the offense was not good against Notre Dame. But the offense should have gotten them wins at Ole Miss and at Memphis. And so I'll just say this. I don't know that there's a great team in the SEC this year. I would actually argue maybe the 2 best teams that I've seen are Oklahoma and Alabama. Maybe Georgia would be 3. Why do I bring it up? None of those 3 are on Arkansas' schedule. And so you look at the teams that they would have to beat. Yeah, Tennessee is going to be tough at Tennessee. LSU is not good right now. And you talk about a program that could go sideways. LSU lost that game. I will tell you this, because I am the only one that's publicly criticizing Garrett Nussmeier. You know who is more upset with Garrett Nussmeier than anybody? LSU fans. They want him benched for Michael Van Buren. And so all of a sudden, you get to November, they'll have already at that point played Alabama. They'll have already played A&M. Vandy is a good team. And so I just bring it up because to me, there are wins on this schedule. I know at LSU is a tough place to play. I know that Texas is a tough place to play. Those are not great football teams right now. Now, Texas coming off of a bye, we'll see. The only point I'm trying to make is Arkansas should have won at Ole Miss. Could have won at Ole Miss at the very least. If you can win at Ole Miss, I'm sorry, you can beat Texas. You can beat LSU. I know they're on the road. And then on top of it, to Luke's point, you get A&M at home. A&M did not look unbeatable against Auburn the other day, right? Missouri, we'll see. Their toughest games are ahead. So there's potential. But Bobby Petrino's got to do it. 4-3, I think, keeps him the job, but you got to get there. What's next, Matt? Tamara, great listener. We always appreciate your support, Tamara. Hunter Yurachek needs to get out. Listen, I don't speak for other fan bases. I don't speak for my own alma mater, UConn. I think I think Tamara, and I hope I'm saying your name right, Tamara. I think your message has about a 99.9% approval rating in the state of Arkansas right now. The only people who disapprove of Tamara's message probably have the last name Yurachek. Listen, I said it last week or 2 weeks ago. We did the whole segment. I think it was in the lead up to the Memphis game. Hunter Yurachek, the AD, spoke at the Little Rock Touchdown Club and acknowledged we are not built to win at the highest level of college football right now. Well, why not? Whose fault is that? Who does that fall on? Oh, I know who that falls on. You. If you're not built to win at this level, that falls on the AD. And I go back to what I said Sunday, because again, there's this conversation about what is the Arkansas coaching job. Well, I'll keep going back to what I said. If Ole Miss is built to win, Ole Miss is going to win 10 games again this year. Look at their schedule. Ole Miss is going to win 9-10 games. They're going to be in the playoff conversation again, maybe win more. And so if Ole Miss is built to win in this era, why can't Arkansas be? If Missouri is built to win in this era, why can't Arkansas be? Tennessee, I know, has had more success in the SEC, but, look at the demographics. Similar, maybe Tennessee's a little bit of an outlier, but the only point I'm trying to make, nobody is saying that you have to be Georgia tomorrow. But your AD also can't publicly say two things at the same time. We're not built to win championships in football, but I'm also the right guy to hire the next head coach, because one, you're not the right guy to hire the next head coach, but two, if I was a candidate, I would be a little bit worried about coming to work for you. And so that's an internal Arkansas thing to figure out. I don't have the answers to how that happens. Also, Tamara says just call her Tammy. So Tammy's got 100% approval rating, 99.9% approval rating. But the point is you can't say that I'm the right person for the job while conversely saying that we are not built to win right now. Thank you, Tammy, for the comment. All right, let's keep it going. Any other questions or comments, Matt? Jones doesn't like SMU being the talk of the. This is a nice little, can we call it a galaxy brain twist? Pull up Shorty, because we referenced earlier, for people who are just joining us, that Bruce Feldman from The Athletic reported, and it got out, so I'm not sharing stuff that's exclusively behind a paywall, but that Jerry Jones is the one that's publicly pushing for Rhett Lashley to be the head coach at Arkansas. And Pull Up Shorty says Jerry doesn't like SMU being the talk of the town in Dallas instead of the Cowboys. Well, I'll say this. Watch the Cowboys Sunday night game, and I've seen a couple SMU games. I think it's safe to say it's still probably a Cowboys town. I did think about this, though. One, by the way, Rhett Lashley does not have a 100% approval rating in the Arkansas fan base because of what happened the last time Arkansas hired an SMU head coach. Now, I will say, I think it's a little bit different hiring an SMU head coach from the AAC at the time, now the American, versus the ACC, which in theory is a power conference program. But I was thinking, I'm not smart enough to know about the power dynamics in the city of Dallas, but I do think it would kind of piss a couple people off if Jerry's the one that's publicly pushing for, the most successful SMU coach since Ron Meyer or Bobby Collins to leave to take the Arkansas job. So, we'll see how much Jerry is involved. He's obviously got a lot on his hands on a day-to-day basis. And I'll let Arkansas fans tell me how much he's actually been involved. I think there's a lot of people that are a lot less famous than Jerry Jones that are actually more involved with Arkansas. I think part of it is Jerry lives in Dallas. I know it's not a far drive, but I don't know that Jerry is as involved as I think maybe people think. But good, I like that conspiracy theory from Pull Up Shorty. Jerry Jones doesn't like that SMU is getting any pub in Dallas. Don't know that I'm quite there yet, but it's an interesting theory. Get to a couple more questions. Let's do it, Matt. We got plenty of time. It's a Tuesday. Okay, Josh Weaver. Josh Weaver, you are my spirit animal. Josh Weaver, email me your address, Aaron Torres podcast questions @gmail.com. We are getting you a Big Pig Invasion shirt because Josh Weaver is saying what Torres is saying. Saying, give me Gruden or give me death. Listen, I love it. And here's the thing. None of these guys are guaranteed to work. None of them. It doesn't matter who it is. By the way, no coach is. Look at Luke Fickell at Wisconsin. Like that hire had 110% approval rating on a scale of 100. Okay. And so this notion that that any hire is 100% safe, I don't buy. There is only one hire, though, that I'm aware of that makes you nationally relevant the moment you make the hire and makes you nationally relevant every time you walk out of the tunnel. It's John freaking Gruden. It's funny. I was thinking about this. Remember, Belichick got the job at North Carolina. And by the way, I'm not comparing him to Bill Belichick because I think there'd be a lot more positivity. We'll get to that in half a second. But Belichick got the North Carolina job and kept doing media. I was thinking about this. I was working out on Monday morning, and Gruden was on that new Barstool morning show on FS1. I don't know a lot about it, but Gruden was on it. Now imagine Gruden taking the Arkansas job and still doing that show, every Monday morning or whatever. And here's the thing about Gruden. Listen, I know you're giving Bobby Petrino a fair chance, so I know you can't really hire Gruden now, but you can certainly meet with him now. And let's say worst case scenario, and I'm not rooting for this, but what if Bobby Petrino starts 0-3? You can have Gruden in town on the job, November 1st. I said this a couple days ago. I forget which. We've done so much Arkansas content the last couple days, but I said this the other day. I said, look, I said, what did I say? I said, UConn, my alma mater. Okay, we don't have to talk about UConn football, but when they fired Randy Edsall in 2022, I think 2021, whatever, Jim Mora was out of coaching. He was hired in late October, early November, and he came to Connecticut and took the job and evaluated the program during the season. So he sat in on practices. He traveled with the team to games. He didn't coach, but he wanted to see what he had, what he didn't have, how things worked, and his whole staff was ready to go the day the season ended. You could hire John Gruden today, and it's not going to happen because they want to give Bobby Petrino a fair shot. But let's say Bobby Petrino starts 0-3, which is in the cards. It could happen. You can hire John Gruden, and he can start putting a staff together. But again, he makes you nationally relevant. The second you hire him, it becomes the biggest story in sports. The second you hire him, HBO wants to do their college hard knocks. They couldn't do it with North Carolina. They're going to do it with Arkansas next year. Whatever, behind the scenes stuff. I'm just telling you, it would create so much interest. And again, Gruden is not Bill Belichick. Okay. So I want to be careful about this. I understand Bill Belichick came from the NFL. Bill Belichick has no personality, can't recruit, sport left him behind. Gruden, I don't know if he can win, but he's going to recruit. He's going to create interest. He's going to create buzz. And I think, we'll see where the rest takes us. So Josh, you're my spirit animal, brother, because give me Gruden or give me death is what Josh Weaver says. Matt, one or two more, then we'll get to the rest of the show. Justin says, Dan Mullen will be a great choice, dude. Okay. No punctuation there. So I thought you were saying great choice, dude, like Torres. Dan Mullen would be a great choice. Dude is a proven winner, built up a dumpster fire similar to us at Mississippi State, was 34-17 at Florida until they fired him for BS reasons. Justin, I tend to agree with you. Let me put it this way. If I was handicapping this job, I think Dan Mullen is, Gruden's there too. But Dan Mullen is probably the guy that out of everyone that's available would 100% take this job. I feel very confident saying, and I have to look closer into what his buyout structure is at UNLV. By the way, if UNLV did not sign him to some contract where they're going to get a ton of money if he ends up leaving for another job, that's on UNLV. But I tend to agree with Justin, is that I think we can now look at the Dan Mullen era at Florida a little bit different. Let's see here. According to producer Matt, if Dan Mullen leaves UNLV for a Power 4 job or NFL job before December 2025, he owes the school a $7 million buyout. But is that December 1st or is it December 31st? There's a huge difference in those two dates. And oh, by the way, I would also add this. With the portal not opening now until January, you can stay at UNLV until 12:01 Eastern time on this January 1st. By the way, shout out to Dan Mullen's agent because the buyout drops December 1st. So that's just bad negotiation for UNLV. It should be December 15th. It should be December 31st. We talked about Curt Cignetti last week. Curt Cignetti's buyout drops December 15th. So basically, a lot of these coaches, a lot of these ADs want to have coaches in place by the first week the season ends. So Curt Cignetti, you would have to wait a few weeks until after the season to hire him. You don't have to with Dan Mullen. December 1st, that's terrible negotiation from the AD. Great news for Arkansas. And as Justin says, I think there's no doubt in my mind that there's some revisionist history on Dan Mullen. Listen, at the time, it felt like to me, okay, maybe he stopped recruiting a little bit and maybe the program was going in the wrong direction. But as Justin says, 34-17 at Florida. And, besides the fact that he proved that he could win at Mississippi State, a bottom tier program in the SEC, 34-17 looks a lot different now than it did back then. He was fired after the 2021 season. That year they did go 6-6. He did get fired before the Florida State game to go 6-6, but Billy Napier, has not been very much better. 6-7 in year one for Billy Napier. Let's see here, 5-7 in year two. I'm not going to go through the whole Billy Napier thing, but I think in hindsight, it's very clear that Dan Mullen was a lot better at Florida than he was being given credit for. And again, I do agree with Justin's sentiment. I think you could do a lot worse than Dan Mullen. Matt, do we have one more? And then maybe we'll take a break and wrap the show. Okay, Jamie. Gruden has the passion, the clout, and the football mind to succeed in the SEC. Jamie, this is such an important part. This last part, you don't get many opportunities to make a hire like this. Totally unique setup. Remember, Gruden is a Super Bowl winning head coach. I think the important thing, he's a larger than life personality. He is a larger than life personality. And he is the type of guy that creates so much interest. And it's this totally unique window where you have a chance to hire him. He's young enough where he could do the job for 7-8 years. It's kind of this pro world that we're going to. But then on top of it, he's not going to get hired by the NFL. He's in the middle of a lawsuit with the NFL. He's not leaving for the NFL. If you hire him for an SEC job, it's not like he's taking another job, and he wants to coach. It's not like you're hiring him out of retirement and he's looking for something to do. He wants to coach. He wants to get back in it. I've said, and I've said this a few times, Dave Portnoy, the founder of Barstool, who hired John Gruden at Barstool, said, I expect him to be coaching again soon. And by the way, I'll say this, listen, I'm supportive of other, media companies and media outlets. You now get the Barstool machine behind you if you hire John Gruden. I don't know what game day looks like or whatever, and I know they're affiliated with Fox, which isn't part of the SEC, but all of a sudden you got all those Barstool people wearing Arkansas gear and Arkansas hats. Jamie's point is so well taken. You don't get many opportunities like this to make a hire. You don't get many opportunities to make a hire like this. I love it, Jamie. I absolutely love it. All right, producer Matt, that's what we're going to do. We'll take one more break. I want to get to a couple other things. We got to get to some other stuff. We could talk Arkansas all day, all night. There's no more good. Is there anything else in the chat? I feel like we're hot right now. All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll come back. When we do, get to some other stuff. Wild stat on Mark Stoops. It's bad at Kentucky. You think it's bad at Arkansas? It might be worse at Kentucky. We'll talk about that. We'll talk a little bit about Tyran Stokes, number one recruit in America. Interesting twist. Interesting development. Quick break.
What's up, everybody? It's AT, and I've told you before, when I'm on the road, when I'm podcasting, sometimes you end up looking like a slob. Look at me, mismatched socks, I'm wearing shorts. What am I doing? The folks at Firebox said, Torres, let's get you some fresh gear to look better when you're on camera. Well, what do you think? This is all part of the spring collection for Firebox. These jeans, perfect when I want to go to games, casual, serious, business casual, you name it. Got the quarter zip, and oh, by the way, we got this perfect zip. This is the perfect spring, summer zip that you can wear when you're out with friends. Maybe it gets a little chilly. Maybe it's a little chilly in the morning. Perfect for all occasions. So this is what I need you to do. If you like what you see, and you should, what I need you to do is visit Feilbach.com. That's Feilbach.com, F-I-O-B-O-C. By the way, Feilbach has a special promo code for listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Use promo code Torres and get 20% off your purchase. Thank you again to Feilbach. By the way, make sure that you're following them on social media at Feilbach, F-I-O-B-O-C. Thank you, Feilbach.
All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So do want to go ahead, switch gears, talk a little bit of Kentucky football. Before we get to Kentucky football, should mention, by the way, we need to shout out our hotel and casino partners who have just opened a brand new sports book in Franklin, Kentucky, Mint Kentucky Downs, Circa Sportsbook, Circa Casino. Okay, so I've told you all about Circa. Bottom line is, remember this, is that if you're in Vegas, best place to watch games, Circa Casino, Circa Sportsbook, biggest sports book in the world. What's especially cool, though, is that they have opened a replica sportsbook in Franklin, Kentucky, Mint Kentucky Downs, and Franklin, Kentucky. Replica sportsbook right on that Kentucky-Tennessee border. So if you live in Nashville, if you live a little bit outside of Nashville, this is actually the closest sportsbook to Nashville. It's a replica sportsbook, and I think especially right now, in this world we live in, where one, there's a million games, but two, everybody's trying to make you sign up for this app, sign up for that app. Paramount, Peacock. No. All you got to do, Circa Casino or Circa Sportsbook, Mint Kentucky Downs. Franklin, Kentucky, not far from Bowling Green, not far from Nashville. Best place to watch all these games on a college football Saturday, an NFL Sunday. Oh, by the way, college hoops is coming. You're going to want to check that out as well. Speaking of which, producer Matt and I will be down at Mint Kentucky Downs, Circa Sportsbook here in the coming weeks as we get ready for college basketball. So cannot wait. Cannot thank Circa enough for their support. Circa Casino, Mint Kentucky Downs. All right. Mentioned I want to talk Kentucky. And I do want to talk Kentucky. And what I will say about Kentucky football is this, is that I truly believe in my heart of hearts. By the way, if you go to Circa Sportsbook, tag Torres, Aaron_Torres, tag Circa Sports, so we know you were there. Take a picture, send whatever, blah, blah, blah. Okay, Kentucky football. It ain't good. And I will say, I truly believe, listen, college football Saturdays are crazy, right? Whatever. You're watching Bama, Georgia. You're watching Oregon, Penn State, and stuff falls through the cracks. And so on Saturday, I was, I had the third screen going. I was watching Kentucky, South Carolina. Kentucky really essentially gets blown out by South Carolina. The final score in that game was 35-13. South Carolina, remember, just a week before, 2 weeks before, was basically unable to move the ball against Vanderbilt. And so we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but I do want to talk about it right now because I think there isn't a bigger story that is more under-discussed in college sports right now than the state of Kentucky football. And what I said, I think I mentioned this briefly on Saturday's show because we really just didn't have a ton of time to talk about it. But what I said is this. As I said, look, I truly believe two things are true on Mark Stoops. First of all, the one thing I will say, this is what I said on Saturday. I said, look, this whole notion of, because I'm still hearing it, Kentucky's the best job in football. And again, I don't criticize other media members. Everybody has opinions. But listen, I even heard Josh Pate say this the other day. And I love Josh Pate. He's great at what he does. Best voice in college football. I'm not saying he's not great at what he does. But, he was on with Cowherd and he said something about, what's the best job? It's Kentucky because you can go 6-6. I'm paraphrasing, but basically it's SEC pay scale with not SEC expectations. And I think that take may have been applicable 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago. I don't know that it is now. And in a lot of ways, it's insulting to pretty much everybody, okay? It's insulting to Mark Stoops and everything that he's built because it was not good when he took over. It was kind of a disaster. And to his credit, built it up to something respectable. But it's also insulting to fans, that fans have to be okay with, hey, if you get to 6-6 in a bowl, shut up. And if you don't deal with it, you're Kentucky. And I think, again, it's no different than Arkansas. It's no different than Vandy. It's no different than a lot of these jobs. I think it's okay to be aspirational and one day to hope to be in the college football playoff. I think it's okay to acknowledge that that's probably not a reality most years, but I also don't think it's okay to accept where the program is right now. And so, like I said, they lost on Saturday, and it was, in my case, a worst case scenario. Okay. So first of all, Matt, you could put up the first tweet from Saturday. We'll save the second one for a minute, but I it's part of what I mentioned. I did put this out on Twitter at Aaron__ Torres. This part, takeaway from Saturday. I don't think enough people are talking about how bad it's gotten at Kentucky. The Wildcats, a little typo by Torres, are now 2-14 in their last 16 SEC games. Last night, this was Saturday, the South Carolina game. The first time I sensed more apathy than anger from fans. It's over for Mark Stoops. Question is, how do you get out of the buyout? Okay, so we can discuss the buyout and this and that in a minute, but I think there's a couple things here. One, that first of all, 2-14 in the last 16 SEC games. I don't think most college football fans realize that it's that bad. I don't think most college football fans realize that, by the way, today is September 30th, 2025 as I record. Why is that relevant? Why is it important? It's important because, how about this? It was exactly 2 years ago today, September 30th, 2023, that Kentucky got its last SEC home win. That was against Florida. Billy Napier, I guess it would have been his second year. So we're talking about now 2 full calendar years since they got their last SEC home win. 2-14 in the last 16 SEC games. And there are 2 things about the South Carolina game besides, and by the way, I think the most important part is what I said in that tweet. It's that I think Kentucky fans have basically given up. I think Kentucky fans have basically said, I'm not even going to invest in this product anymore. And I don't just mean financially, I mean with my time. I think even a year ago, a Kentucky fan would sit through a bad game and say, maybe it'll get better. Wait till next week. This was a bad matchup. Now I think most Kentucky fans are like, I'm not wasting my time. Basketball season's coming soon. Big Blue Madness is 2 Saturdays from today. Mark Pope is the man. He's got stuff figured out. I don't need to waste my time with this. And watching that South Carolina game, I think 2 things really stood out about why and how it's gotten so bad. It's not just 2-14 in your last 16 SEC games. Here's the other part. There were 2 things that stood out that were really bad. One, it was just that you weren't even competitive against South Carolina. Okay. And listen, this is just an honest conversation. This isn't a, pick apart Mark Stoops, but when he was at his best, the South Carolina game was just a gimme on the schedule. Like, I don't think people realize this. You know that over an 8-year stretch, when Mark Stoops really got it rolling, Kentucky beat South Carolina 7 out of 8 times. And that's not to dismiss South Carolina. It's not to take away from what Shane Beamer has built, but it's a perfect metaphor for who Kentucky was and who they are not right now. South Carolina was a gimme every year. South Carolina's better, but Kentucky has also regressed. Vanderbilt was a gimme every year. Vandy is certainly better. I get that. But Kentucky has also regressed. Mississippi State's no longer on the schedule, so whatever. Florida was a gimme. Now, Florida might be a gimme this year because Billy Napier's that bad, but I don't think people realize, what was it, 4 out of 6 years Kentucky beat Florida at the height of Mark Stoops? And so to me, that's what stands out about this current situation, but more importantly, the South Carolina game. This isn't a vintage South Carolina team, and I'll tell you what, through the years when South Carolina was a little bit like this, really since Mark Stoops took over, Kentucky was going to win that game, whether it was in Columbia or in Lexington. So the fact that you lost that game is really bad. But here is what is especially concerning if you're a Kentucky fan. The one thing that you were able to hold your hat on through all of those years is that the defense was always going to withstand the test of time, right? And I've been, I think, more critical than most about Mark Stoops. I understand there are some inherent disadvantages about the Kentucky coaching job, but I've been critical because just doesn't coach a fun style to play or a fun style to watch, excuse me. And you're going to rely on defense and the run game, and you're going to try to slow things down and and this and that, and you're going to play on the margins, but you're always going to run the ball well. You're always going to play defense, and that is how you're going to win these games. And you might not be able to win a game, 38-35 against Ole Miss or something like that. I'm just using that as a hypothetical. But man, if you can keep it in the 20s, things could be different. Well, that's why the South Carolina game is so interesting, because the defense has now fallen apart. I was talking to somebody about this over the weekend. Is like, we're in a situation now where it's like, no matter what you ever thought of Stoops, you could count on that defense to keep them in games and maybe win them some games. Not anymore. This is kind of wild. Kentucky now, right now, and I understand they've played 2 SEC games, but it's not like they played Bama and Georgia. They played Ole Miss, who is very good at home, and South Carolina. Kentucky is currently 102nd nationally in total defense. 102nd nationally in total defense. Yeah, that is not going to get the job done. By the way, if we're just talking about the SEC, this is kind of wild as well. 15th out of 16 teams in the SEC, only Arkansas is worse. The defense was what you held your hat on. The defense, let's take a look really quick because I want to see this actually off the top of my head. As recently as 2022, Kentucky had the number 12 defense in the country nationally. 2022, they were number 12 in the country nationally. I can't find them 2023, but you're 112th nationally, and you haven't played the toughest part of your schedule. You still have Tennessee. You still have Texas. Now, whatever. The point I'm trying to make, the defense is falling apart, and that was never an issue under Mark Stoops. Well, it is now. It's not getting better. And I'll tell you this. I saw a shocking stat that I think, to me, actually did make me realize that it's not getting better, because it's one thing if you're not playing well, if there's some reason to sell hope, right? If there's a 5-star quarterback that's not playing yet, producer Matt's going to get mad at me for saying this with the way Auburn's looked, but, I think Hugh Freeze is going to go to his boss, John Cohen, and say, look, it hasn't been good, but most of our best players are freshmen and sophomores. I need more time. I don't think that's fair. I'm just saying he can still sell. We're young. Give us time. Mark Stoops can't. And here's the crazy part. Kentucky has always not only played on the fringes, but recruited on the fringes. And the recruiting isn't going very well. So Kentucky, in their heyday, what they did best, they locked down the state of Kentucky. And they did a very good job in the state of Ohio. I think the premise at the time from Mark Stoops was like, look, Ohio State can only take 25 guys. So why don't you come to the SEC, play with the big boys, compete in the highest level of college football, and let's win us some games. And you go through the era of Kentucky football where they had their most success. Benny Snell, Ohio guy. Lynn Bowden Jr., Ohio guy. Wandale Robinson, who I know didn't commit to Kentucky out of high school, but he's a Kentucky guy. Landon Young, 5-star offensive tackle, plays for the New Orleans Saints, currently a Kentucky guy. Most of those best players were in that Kentucky-Ohio State area. Excuse me. Oh, producer Matt, you can pop up the second tweet, because when I saw this, it blew me away. It's not just that Kentucky has the 58th ranked recruiting class and the 54th ranked recruiting class in the country. They currently have 0 players committed from the state of Kentucky. Like, I'm not trying to be a jerk, and I understand that, not every player in Kentucky can play in the SEC, but there's a handful. There's a half a dozen to a dozen that can play in the SEC. Kentucky has 0 of them committed. 0 of them committed. That is not going to get the job done. And if you can't sell to players in your home state that you should come to the state school and represent the state school for the people of the state, I just don't know how much time you have left. And I don't know any way that you can sell that things are going to be better. Because if you can't sell the best players in your home state, play for the state school in the SEC, how are you going to go sell other good players to do the same? I don't think you can keep in the SEC going to the portal year over year over year and expecting to hit on player after player after player. And it just shows to me this thing is over. Now, the buyout stuff is obviously very interesting. We've talked about it plenty with these other programs, and I get it. But at the same time, with Mark Stoops, listen, I'll just say, I'll be consistent with what I've said on the buyout. I understand how buyouts work. I understand if he was fired tomorrow, he'd be owed like $40 million within like a 30 to 40 to 50 day period. Like basically it's essentially a lump sum buyout. There are also ways to get around that. One, you can, and this is kind of on Mark Stoops, renegotiate a buyout. Sam Pittman did it earlier this week. I think and it wasn't a ton of money. I don't want to make Sam Pittman out to be some saint, but I think he was owed like 7.5. They settled on like 6, whatever, but it was renegotiated. And if you're Mark Stoops, I guess what I would say is this, is I understand how the buyout works. And I understand the people that would sit there and say, you're never going to give up $40 million. He's going to coach into every last penny. Maybe, But the counter is a couple things. One, there's always a way for the school to get out of a buyout. I'm just saying, go Google some stuff. Two, on top of it, I think also the coach can renegotiate it, and you can renegotiate in a lot of ways. You could get the $40 million. Maybe it's the Bobby Bonilla $40 million over 40 years. I don't know. Maybe it's, $40 million, maybe you negotiate it to 20 and you give them 2 for 10 years. I don't know. But what I do know is that if it was me and I was Mark Stoops and I was almost 60 years old, and also I was living a world where I knew nobody wanted me at the job, nobody wanted me in town, I don't know that that would be like a thing that I would be super excited to show up for every single day. And I was thinking about this. People could say, oh, there's no way he's giving up that money. Okay. But think about what it's like to be Mark Stoops in Lexington right now. I don't know his setup, but I can't imagine it's very fun for him if he needs to stop at the gas station for gas, if he needs to stop at the grocery store for something, if he wants to stop and have a dinner somewhere, and I think I understand that what the buyout is. I also understand there's a quality of life aspect to this, and this guy has $50 million in the bank. And so does he really want to spend the next 3 or 4 years coaching out every day of his contract, going to a place where everybody hates him, going to a place where he's not wanted? And by the way, when I say people hate him, I don't mean they literally hate him, and I don't blame Kentucky fans. He's not living up to his end of the bargain. But I said what I'll be consistent with what I've said, and I truly believe it. I do not believe Mark Stoops will be the head coach of Kentucky next year. It's getting too bad. It's getting too toxic. You're going to lose too much money to keep bringing him back. And I don't know how it happens, but I think the buyout gets renegotiated. Matt, we need to take one more quick break. We can run the merch ad again. And I do have one basketball topic that I want to get to, an interesting twist with Tyran Stokes. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, I have so many people that reach out and say, Torres, you give me hours and hours and hours of free content every day, every month, every year. What can I do to help support the show? Well, you want to support the show and look good in the process. Make sure to check out and support the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Some of you wondering, what can I get in that merch store, Torres? Well, Kentucky fans, we got our Mark Pope Hope and Pope t-shirts. That is right. Mark Pope, monster first year. Year 2 is going to be even better. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirt at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is coming. It is here. John Calipari has things rocking. Get your Big Pig Invasion tees. Again, aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. St. John's fans, we have our Big Rick Energy t-shirts. And if you're just a college basketball fan in general, guess what? Your March is for Day Drinking shirt. That is the shirt that you need year-round, but especially for the next NCAA tournament. You can order yours now. By the way, football fans, we got you covered too. Auburn fans, we already know the freeze warning has hit the plains. Make sure to get your freeze warning t-shirts. Also, Nebraska fans, new era, new rules, the t-shirt that you need before the start of this coming season. And oh, by the way, if you're a Colorado fan, if you're just a Coach Prime fan, we have our Dion shirts and hats, more of them than we know what to do with. So to check out the full line of Aaron Torres Media merch and also support the show, good news is we're going to have even more for the fall. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And for more information, you can always reach out at Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All right, everybody, I'm back. Good to be back. Final segment of the show. So good to be back. Before we get to Tyran Stokes, one thing, and I thought this could happen. So every week, every coach has media availability in the lead up to their games. Well, Rhett Lashley has just spoken. Here is a quote from Bill Embody, who covers SMU for On3. Rhett Lashley on speculation about the Arkansas job. Quote, "We're present and we're happy here. We're fully committed to what we're building here." I mean, I get it, and I'll have to look at the quotes more deeply, once I get off air here. But the counter to that is that's not the definitive no that I don't know is that definitive enough if you're an SMU fan? I don't know. We're present and we're happy here. We're fully committed to what we're building here. Arkansas fans, you can get in the chat and tell me that I'm going to read it one more time. We're present and we're happy here. We're fully committed to what we're building here. I need to hear tone. I need to hear diction. But this isn't, remember, I think it was 2021 when USC fired Clay Helton. There was like a moment where somebody linked Mike Tomlin, the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach, to the USC job. And he went to the podium the next day and he's like, that is the stupidest idea I've ever heard. This is no. This will always be no. This will never not be no. That's the response that I want to get from my head coach. Maybe I'm just being hyperbolic because I don't care if Rhett Lashley goes. But again, I'll read it one more time. This is from Bill Embody of On3. We're present and we're happy here. We're fully committed to what we're building. That's not like the definitive no that I think that I would necessarily want if I was an Arkansas fan. All right. Let's switch gears. Let's get to one more topic. And listen, I said it the other day. I said it a second ago. We're getting really close to basketball. Like, I don't think people realize October is tomorrow. Like, next Saturday is Big Blue Madness, Kentucky's tip-off event. This Friday is Arkansas's tip-off event. I think they're calling it like the something at the Palace. UConn, their first exhibition game is the following Monday, October 13th. So the season is coming quick, but also we're starting to get some movement in recruiting. You know, recruiting right now has been very, very, very quiet. One, I just don't think this class is as good as some of the previous classes. Two, I think just NIL has everybody a little confused right now. Rev share a little confused. Players in 2026 are hearing what the AJ DeBonsa's got, the Nate Ament's got, thinking they're going to get the same. And coaches are like, it's a different set of rules, and you ain't AJ DeBonsa, you ain't Cam Boozer, you ain't Nate Ament. And so it's been a little bit slower. And it's been, by the way, especially slow for the number one recruit in America, Tyran Stokes. Okay, so why is it slow for Tyran Stokes? Well, he took a bunch of visits in the spring, but we mentioned this a few weeks ago. He actually started playing high school football. This is a crazy story. It's a great story. I love everything about it. But Tyran Stokes, who goes to high school literally about a mile from where I live, Sherman Oaks, Notre Dame High School in Sherman Oaks, California. He decided like a month ago, he's like, I want to play high school football. And he never played football, at least at a highly competitive level. But his argument was, this is my last chance to get to be a kid. I want to do it. And what was interesting was, I had a couple people tell me they thought it was a publicity stunt. Well, he was eligible to play last Friday. He played last Friday. He caught at least one touchdown that I saw, maybe a second one. And he's got his first home game since joining the team this Friday. Now, unfortunately, I'm going to be out of town traveling. But Tyran Stokes is playing high school football right now, so it's slowed down his recruitment a little bit. Well, I bring it up because there was a little interesting nugget, a little interesting piece of news that came in his recruitment, and it actually came via. Is my mic off here a little bit? We're gonna have to just finish this show as is. There was one interesting piece of news, and it came via Tyran Kinney, who is committed to the University of Kansas. Okay, so Tyran Kinney, 5-star prospect from the state of Kentucky. We talked about him all summer long. And for a long time, we thought it was going to be Louisville, and then there was other teams involved. He visited Arkansas a few weeks ago. But I bring it up because Tyran Kinney on Sunday actually committed to Kansas. First of all, great get for Bill Self. Kansas fans think I don't like Kansas. I do like Kansas. The issue has been they've been a little bit disappointing. When you start the last 2 seasons number 1 in the country and you finish the season on the first weekend of the NCAA tournament, this year is a 7 seed. I'm sorry, that's a disappointing season, okay? But Bill Self, to his credit, gets this recruitment done. By the way, I think we all saw the story, Tyran Kinney. There was a report that Mark Pope and Pat Kelsey had words outside of his house when they were recruiting him. This was a story from a few weeks ago, but apparently, midnight Eastern time was the first time you could meet with recruits. Mark Pope was supposed to go first. He doesn't show up. Pat Kelsey says, I'm going in. Then Mark Pope shows up, apologizes for being late. Pat Kelsey's there. They start yapping at each other, whatever. Well, Tyran Kinney, over the course of the last couple of days, decided that he was going to make his decision. He chooses Kansas. Good for him. I think he's going to be really good at Kansas. They clearly need a point guard for when Darren Peterson leaves after this year. I think, was it Bill Self, I think it was Taylor Kinney. Somebody said, like, Darren's probably going to be the number one pick, and Taylor Kinney's the guy that gets to replace him. We'll see if Darren Pearson's the number one pick, but he's going to be gone. Taylor Kinney's in. What does this have to do with Tyran Stokes? I know you're all wondering. Well, here's what. Taylor Kinney wants to bring Tyran Stokes to Kansas with him. Matt, you could pop up the tweet. Taylor Kinney telling Joe Tipton after he committed. Joe Tipton said, I asked Taylor Kinney who he plans to recruit when he gets to Kansas. His response, shoot, I already know one that's coming. Right when I said I was going, he put that call in. I ain't going to say his name, but he's going to announce. Then, and this is where it gets interesting, Taylor Kinney says, I'm trying to get Tyran Stokes on board too. Very interesting. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. First of all, Taylor Kinney saying that he has one guy already that he knows is coming. When Taylor Kinney committed, said, I put that call in. I'm not going to say his name, but he's going to announce. I don't have this on 100% authority. I do think that's 4-star center Davion Atkins, currently plays at Prolific Prep, which is now in the state of Florida. He's going to announce this weekend. It's down to Houston. It's down to Rutgers, I believe, is the third team, and Kansas. Down to those three. And I think Davion Atkins is going to be the second player to commit to Kansas in about an 8-day period and join Taylor Kinney. But can they get Tyran Stokes? I think that's why everybody's here. And I think what I would say is this. I think it's a great thing for Taylor Kinney to say. I think he's certainly going to try, and I think it's possible. But I don't know that right now, this second, I would necessarily peg Tyran Stokes to Kansas. Why could it happen? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, Kansas is in the mix. I mean, Tyran Stokes did visit Kansas, I want to say in like May or June. It was actually pretty early on the calendar. Visited Kansas. By the way, shout out Tyran Stokes. He was the first player I've ever seen bring his dog to his recruiting photo shoot. That's a thing. I don't know if it's going to become a thing, but Tyran Stokes did it at Kansas. So the relationships there with Kansas. And also remember, Taylor Kinney from the state of Kentucky. Tyran Stokes originally from Louisville. There's a tie there. They're both from Kentucky. They've probably known each other since they're kids. And I certainly think that Taylor Kinney is going to do his best to get Tyran Stokes to the university or to Kansas University. And so we'll see what happens. I think there's ties there. What I would also say is this. I don't know if it's going to happen, although what I'll also say about Tyran Stokes is that the recruitment has been so quiet over the last couple of weeks because I truly believe he's focused on playing high school football. But at the end of the day, listen, I'll just be quick on Tyran Stokes. We talked about this probably a month ago. I still think it's ultimately going to be a Nike school. I know that in this era of NIL, Adidas, Nike, Under Armour doesn't matter as much. You know, Cooper Flagg signed with New Balance, played for a Nike school at Duke. Darius Acuff is at Arkansas, a Nike school, has a deal with Reebok. And I think, 15 years ago, if you played on a Nike AAU circuit, you went to a Nike school. If you played in an Adidas circuit, you went to an Adidas school. I don't think it's quite like that anymore. I just don't think that Nike is going to let this kid get away. Tyran Stokes is going to be the number one pick in the 2027 NBA draft. So high school senior who will play a freshman year in 2026, 2027, he's going to be the number one pick. You don't want him going to a rival school that is Adidas. And I think more importantly, then all of a sudden you get in that Adidas ecosystem. Ecosystem? Is that right? Ecosystem? Yeah, that sounds right. Where all their execs are at these Kansas games or Louisville games for that matter. They're at all your games. They're around your people. They're around your agent. They're around your mom. And I think if you're Nike, you say, if we got to drop a bag to make sure that this kid ends up at Kentucky or Oregon or USC, then we're going to go ahead and do it. And so to me, listen, I think we're going to start to get clarification soon, maybe after football season of all things. But I would still say that as of right now, I think I would probably lean Kentucky. I still think Kentucky is probably the team to beat on that recruiting front. He's from the state of Kentucky. I know his mom did the whole thing of, we're Louisville people. We don't watch Kentucky games, whatever. But Nike school, home state, Mark Pope, you can sell as like you're the face of the biggest brand in college basketball. He would be probably like that first mega one and done superstar of the Pope era. And he's from the state of Kentucky. And to Mark Pope's credit, he has closed very well on players from Kentucky, Malachi Moreno, Jasper Johnson, most notably. So we'll see what happens. I think it's interesting. Listen, Oregon's going to make their push. I know he visited USC, and I will say, if it's going to be an Adidas school, like, don't you think it would be Louisville more likely than it would be Kansas? Hometown schools, whatever, face of the program, face of the city, etc. So we'll see what happens there. But I think it's an interesting story. I don't know that Talon Kinney is going to go ahead and be able to convince Tyran Stokes to come to Lawrence. All right, I'll tell you what, that's it for this episode of the Aaron Torres Pod. Goodness gracious, what a show. About an hour and a half of live content here on a Tuesday morning. By the way, I had people in the comments the other day with like the Penn States, oh, you talk too much, or well, get to your point. Listen, this is how we do the show. And I appreciate everybody who has tuned in to listen, because we have an awesome crowd and we do appreciate your support. If you're not subscribed, please make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you get your podcast, make sure to subscribe. Also, make sure to rate and review the show. Go ahead, give us a quick 5 stars. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, all that good stuff. Make sure you're following on social media. Aaron_Torres on Twitter. Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram. By the way, if you're on TikTok, Aaron Torres Pod on TikTok as well. We did our first TikTok live today. We'll see how the content numbers go, but we'll see what happens there. But we appreciate your support. Shout out to our partners, SeatGeek.com, SeatGeek and SeatGeek.com. Promo code Torres gets you $20 off your first purchase. Circuit Casino and Sportsbook. And Matt, we might as well shout out really quick our friends and partners, Collie Puffs. So Collie Puffs, by the way, Collie Puffs, they are at a big expo this week. They invited me to come. I could not make it. But bottom line is, here's what you need to know. It's that time of year. You're sitting on the couch. You're watching a lot of college football. College basketball's coming. NFL on Sundays. Two Monday Night Football games. You need a snack that's healthy, delicious, something you're going to love, something your kids are going to love. Try Collie Puffs, okay? Family-owned company, so you're supporting small businesses. But here's the best part. They have a great product. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. They taste freaking delicious, though, and they're a great snack to have when you are sitting on the couch for 12 hours a day watching college football. At this point, you don't need to take my opinion for it. Just try them out for yourself. All you need to do, go to CauliePuffs.com, 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 and you can also try them on Amazon.com as well. But if you go to Collie Puffs, if you go to CauliePuffs.com, use promo code Torres, it will get you 15% off your entire purchase. So you're catering for a 100-person party, 15% off. You want to buy 1 or 2 bags to try them, 15% off. CauliePuffs.com, promo code Torres, get you 15% off. All right, I'll tell you what, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. What a show. What an event. I cannot believe we just did about an hour and a half of live content on a Tuesday. So good to have stuff to talk about. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, UF-Ed. Unblock me, bro. I'll be back. I will be back Thursday morning. Actually, tell you what, Wednesday night, Wes Moore, who covers Arkansas, great at what he does. He broke the John Calipari story. He's going to go ahead and join us. We'll talk a little bit about the football coaching